but we can see.
The radical, fundamental principles of freedom, rational self-interest, and individual rights. This is the Yaron Brook Show.
All right, everybody. Welcome to Yaron Brook Show on this, Yaron and Nikos in Dialogue show. Too long. Yaron and Nikos. That's it. The Yaron and Nikos show. And so welcome. Thanks for joining us as we go down another rabbit hole, another one of these intellectual mysteries, if you will. And really, there's a sense in which there's a mystery here because many of us, we all noticed, you could not notice after October 7th, the fact that all these kids who had, before being woke and talking about inequality and talking about gender and talking, all these, real leftist kids, suddenly, I mean, it's almost like a switch just flipped, suddenly became the biggest fans of the Islamist movement, biggest fans of Hamas, but more broadly of Islamism generally. It's super intriguing. Queers for Palestine, which I promise we will delve into. We actually have now an explanation for queers on Palestine. I know many of you are intrigued by what that might be. But the whole phenomena of this alliance, and we'll talk about this as well, that you're seeing it in England, an alliance between the environmental left, the Greens, the socialist left, and the Islamists. And you go, the Islamists are not socialists. They're certainly not environmentalists. What the hell is going on here? So, to guide us through this rabbit hole, of course, Nikos, nobody better than Nikos to help us do this. So maybe we should start at the beginning, Nikos. At the very beginning, we all have just noticed this in a sense, or many people have just noticed this recently, right, since October 7th. But where does this alliance of left and Islamism really start?
Let me tell you where it definitely does not start.
Yep.
It does not start with Marx. Marx would be very, very angry with this alliance because Marx was not just very Eurocentric.
Yep.
He had very little patience for what he'd call Oriental societies because he considered them societies of stasis, societies that nothing happens. They deprave human beings from agency. And actually Engels says they don't even have a history. They have this cyclical thing. It's tribal battles between Bedouins and townspeople, and then Bedouins become the townspeople, and there it goes, and nothing happens. So basically, I have no interest there.
It didn't fit into their whole history of their whole philosophy of history. I mean, the dialectic doesn't work in Islam.
There's no dialectic because there's nothing, there's not much happening, Marx and Engels will say. Now, the first people who actually had to pay some attention to Muslims were the Bolsheviks after the Russian Revolution, because the Muslim minority was 10% in the Russian Empire. And actually, the weird thing is, the percentage of Muslims in the Communist Party was bigger than the percentage in the population, which I found very weird.
Really?
So very early, the Bolshevik noticed that most of the Muslim population live under British imperialism, British colonialism. And British colonialism is the enemy. So they can say, let's see if we can play a bit with Islam and use it to our advantage. So you have this very weird moment where in a conference of the Communist International in the 1920, you have one of the biggest hotshots of the revolution, a guy called Zinoviev, who literally said the words that there should be a holy war of the people of the East against the British Empire. And the interesting thing is the reaction from the audience. The audience erupts in applaud. So the audience connects with this idea, connects with the idea of holy war. But this doesn't go very far because soon Stalin comes to power and he says, look, we don't play with any of these things. Religion is... So in this country, we're all Soviets. The only time, interestingly, he uses Islam is when he talks to these Oriental leaders and he wants to put them against Trotsky, and he refers to Trotsky as this Jewish internationalist. So it's like, I understand you people. I'm not like these Jews who don't get it.
Interesting. So, and this conference was in Baku, which is in Azerbaijan.
Yes.
Which was part of the Soviet Union at the time, I think, or at least became part of it. I mean, they wanted that part of the world to a large extent because of the oil. Azerbaijan is the first place you get commercial discovery of oil in the 19th century. So it becomes and the Soviets are always wanted, and I think Putin today would love to be able to get his hands on Azerbaijan. But
it's not that they were asked, the Azerbaijanis, if they wanted to be part of Soviet Union, as it happened with Anyway, then for decades, not much is happening because there is political Islam hasn't got much of a presence, and the communists are busy mostly fighting internal war, trying to expand the revolution abroad. Then you have the Second World War. So not much.
So just so we clarify, the rise of the Muslim Brotherhood is the early 1920s in Egypt. Hassan el-Banna. Really, we don't see any real coalition there between the Muslim Brotherhood and the left in Egypt or anywhere else. So this is a post-Muslim Brotherhood and more of a, as we'll see, more of a Shiite than a Sunni.
More of a Shiite thing. Another development which, let's put it somewhere in the back of our head, of our mind, in the 50s Soviet Union is allying with the Arabs.
Yep.
But the Arabs at that point, they put forward the secular phase, the Arab nationalism, and they see radical Islam as a threat. Nasser sees radical Islam as a threat. Having said that, as we explained to people when we talked about the War of Independence, in the Arab street, Islam is already strong. In the Arab street, there's already declaring jihad against Israel. But on the top level, the political leaders are more on the side of secular type Arab nationalism.
And it is true that among the Muslim Brotherhood, at least in Egypt, they viewed the real enemy as Nasser. They viewed the real enemy as Arab nationalism. And we'll deal with the Jews later. I mean, the Jews are the enemy, but they're later. They for a long time within the Islamist movement, the urgency was around getting rid of their rulers so that they could dominate. And so the Muslim Brotherhoods who were in jail in the late 60s were offered to get out of jail free card if they joined the army and went and fought the Israelis. And they said no. They said, no, you're the enemy, Nasser, the enemy, not out of any love for the Jews, but out of a hatred of these nationalists.
And the truth is that Sunni Islam and the left never really hit it off.
Yep.
However, this is not the same as with Shiite radicalism. So our first we talked about Baku, we go a bit southward, we go to Lebanon. Lebanon around the 70s is the place where it's this hub where Islamists and leftists meet, sometimes literally in the same training camps. Let us say something very quickly first about the Shiite Islam. You've talked in the past about the difference between Sunnis and Shiites. You have these lectures about the history of the Middle East. But let's put it very quickly. Shiites are something like the proletarians of Islam. Always defeated or with a narrative of defeat. Literally, they celebrate the defeat in Karbala. Their whole story is a story of defeat. And always it's a story of we are the least privileged. We are the ones who have grievances.
And at the same time, at least during the Islamic Renaissance, they were the intellectuals. They were the real, a lot of the philosophers, a lot of the scientists during this period were Persian, were Iranians and Shiite, and intellectuals, and they were also, they adopted the Sufi, the mystical. They also became much more mystical than the Sunnis did,
and more looking for things around Islam for inspiration on how to promote their views. So the key figure here, although he's not a leftist, is a guy who you could have a Netflix series about, Musa al-Sadr. This is a guy who is behind the rise of Shiite Islam. Tall, charismatic guy. He's from Iran, but he finds himself in Lebanon. And he tries to awaken the Shiite population using, though, not the language of just the language of the Holy Book. He speaks the language of oppression. He speaks the language of social justice, and he speaks the language of emancipation. And I said there should be a Netflix series because, like the prophet of Shiite, he disappears at some point. Probably Gaddafi killed him, but he doesn't live enough to see the Iranian Revolution, which, as we'll see, is the focal point. But for the first time, you have something as a Shiite movement which speaks the language of the left, even if its leaders are not leftists. But in South Lebanon, in the late 60s, early 70s, you have leftists meeting and training together with Islamists, because you have all these camps funded often by Soviet Union and the Eastern Bloc, where you have PLO fighters, Palestinians, and Western leftist terrorists. And sometimes they even live in the same barracks. And add to these people Iranians who are opposing the regime of the Shah. So Iran at that time has a secular regime that is very much oppressing leftists and Islamists. And these people, a lot of them, train in Lebanon. And in Lebanon, you have these strong relationships, the first real alliances between the left, Arabs, and actually Islamists. So there you also have, for example, the liberation movement of Iran, which is a religious movement, but which speaks a leftist language. And actually they translate in Farsi the manual of the urban guerrilla. This was written by a Marxist, Marigela. I have this in Greek, the Handbook of Urban Guerrilla. So they speak the same language, they read the same books, and most importantly, they have the same enemy. Who is the enemy? Predictable. The United States, Israel, and Western imperialism. That's the language. And probably we don't want to go to the Lebanese civil war because we'd need 3 hours. It's the most complicated. But in the Lebanese civil war, you also have on the ground leftists and radical Muslims allying and literally being on the same barricade. Shall we move to Iran? Now we are in the 70s, so till now you have this undercurrent of political Islam. But
well,
of course,
we're in Lebanon. As you said, the civil war, everybody's fighting everybody, and you're right. Just to figure out their alliances and how they shift on almost daily basis would take 3 hours at least, and less important, I think, overall, although huge ramifications, because ultimately we had Hezbollah, and out of that, and the combination of the Iranian civil war with Iran is a powerful combination. But so you've got these people training together and aligned in certain ways in the civil war. How does that migrate to Iran? Does it migrate to Iran? And what role does Paris have in all this?
It does migrate to Iran mostly through the figure of a guy called Ali Shariati.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Shariati, influenced by al-Sadr, but he's someone he's not a leftist first, he's an Islamist first. That's very important.
Yep.
But he comes up with something that he calls Red Shiism, so Red Shiite Islam, which is Islam fused with Marxism, but Islam first. So using Marxism as a tool to promote this particular version of Islam. Again, the Shiite Islam, which sees itself, we are the Islam of the oppressed. not of the elites, not of the Sunnis who are all the, we are the oppressed. And this is a call for social justice and a struggle for a society that will be ruled by the lessons of Islam. Careful, the lessons of Islam. Not by mullahs, the lessons of Islam. So his intellectual reference were not just the Prophet, but mostly the anti-colonial teachings of Frantz Fanon and the teachings of Jean-Paul Sartre. Here is the first time that Paris comes into play. Most of these radical Shiites who fuse Shiite with socialism, their point of reference is French intellectuals or French-influenced intellectuals like Frantz Fanon. And of course, when we talk about Paris, when we talk about the Paris
Say a little
of
about Fanon. Who was Fanon, and what was his set of beliefs? Or,
yes.
briefly.
Very briefly, Fanon talks about this French-Algerian writes about that conflict, and he gives a voice to the anti-colonial struggle. With Fanon, the violence, the anti-colonial violence is justified, and the revolutionary subject is seen as the anti-colonial movement. So till then, with Marxism, who is the prophets, who are the people who will bring forward the revolution, who are the angels of history? The working class. But as we saw in an episode a couple of weeks ago, the Frankfurt School, the working class are driving cool cars and they're watching TV in the West. So now we have to look for a different revolutionary subject, and we find it in the anti-colonial struggles elsewhere, far away from the left. So this is what Fanon's most important theoretical contribution is.
So is there a sense in which the left is replacing anti-capitalism with anti-colonialism?
Yes, because with anti-colonialism, you have the feet on the ground.
Yep.
There are no feet on the ground in the West. Actually, they are. The students, and remember what we said with Marcuse.
In the 60s.
In the 60s. The
that
blacks,
goes
minorities.
away. Yeah.
But over there are these revolutionary sounds. And that's very convenient, right? Because you can mobilize them, quote, without you doing anything.
Yep.
If you go to your local labor union, they're going to kick you out and call you a hippie freak.
Yeah.
But you can claim, but I speak on behalf of the oppressed who are 3 continents away. So it's also a result of their defeat in the West when it comes to the working class. The working class doesn't want to do anything with them. So now, conveniently, they find this, and there's almost something, this kind of Oriental, like that, there's this magical, mystical place over there where things are happening, where people are pure, where people are not alienated. How did you call it in your show the other day? They are authentic. Authentic, yes.
And by the way, I told you I'd bring in Rousseau. I mean, we could bring in now and we can come back to him later.
Mm-hmm.
But that's the fascination they all have with Rousseau. Because in Rousseau, what does it mean to be authentic? It's to be with nature. It's to be, away. What is the destroyer of man? What destroys our authenticity?
Civilization. Technology. Yeah.
So civilization. So the fact that, so Western civilization is the destroyer of human authenticity. It is the destroyer of what man really is about. And, these people out there, they're being oppressed by colonialism. They're being oppressed by civilization, and they're fighting to rediscover their authentic self. And
their
maybe
non-alienated
when they discover
self.
that authentic self, that religion stuff will fall away. Maybe.
Exactly. And we have to learn from them.
Yeah.
So it's not that we enlighten them, it's the opposite. We will learn from it. And this is the period where you have spoiled the Western leftist brats, literally going to work in the farms in China, in Vietnam, in Cuba, and some of them also in the PLO training camps in Lebanon. So speaking of French intellectuals, the top of them, the intellectual celebrity of the time, Michel Foucault, when he senses that things are kicking off in Iran, so late in 1978, more and more people in Iran rise up against the Shah. It's
So,
not, yes.
so before we get to Foucault, I think it's important to talk about Khomeini,
Oh yeah,
who is definitely inspired by what was his name? Sharia?
Al-Sadr,
No, the student of Al-Sadr, the
Shariati,
Iranian. Say that again.
Ali Shariati.
Ali Shariati, that's right. He's definitely inspired by Shariati. And the way he spreads his message in Iran is through audio cassettes. And, this is under Shah's regime. The Shah is it's an authoritarian regime. This is not a nice regime. They're trying to oppress the Islamists. They view them as a threat. But, they didn't, Khomeini, who had tried to instigate an Islamist activism in Iran, was forced out and sent into exile into Paris. And from Paris,
Not yet. In Iraq. Till a couple of months before the revolution, he's still in Iraq.
Yes, that's right. So he's in Iraq. And the way he spreads his ideology in Iran is with these cassettes. And
these cassettes were like the Twitter of the time.
Yes, and they were it was secret. If you caught with them, you could go to jail. They were risking their lives. And in these cassettes are his sermons. And he does a masterful job of intertwining Islamist ideology with social justice, socialist and leftist ideology. So he's inspired by Shariati, and he's taking, I don't think he believes it, but he identifies this as a strategic alliance that can really help him. And so he's not only inspiring people to Islam, he's inspiring a lot of the students to support him. So, he's preparing the ground in Iran for years before he shows up in 79 with this hybrid of Islamism and socialism.
And again, that's not entirely relevant, but it is relevant. People who say today, oh, the cards are stacked against us, how can we pass our messages? Do you know how actually these cassettes, so the obvious thing is you'd try to bring the cassettes in the country, but because this was not possible, what they would do is you would call long distance, which back then used to cost a fortune, and people you would play the cassette, and people on the other side in Iran would record the cassette from the phone call, and that's how the cassettes would go on and from hand to hand. So yes, by that point, the voice of the Khomeini, the voice of Al-Sadr, the voice of Shariati. By the way, both Sadr and Shariati were dead by then. Shariati was probably killed by Savak, although it never became real. Al-Sadr, no one knows what happens. Probably he, as kids call these days, amogged Gaddafi, so Gaddafi killed him on the spot. Or because he told him that you don't understand really Islam, and also he was taller and probably more good-looking than Gaddafi, and Gaddafi didn't take these things.
Can't have that.
Yeah. Anyway, so late in 1978, while there is, and we have to keep this very clear in mind, if you're a leftist at that point, it's a very depressing period because nothing is happening. Most of the student movements are dying. The terrorist movements, the Red Brigades, the Badr Mine, they are losing their momentum. Yep. And suddenly, China has become, now is in the reformist route. Suddenly, these people over there who are standing up, there seems to be a revolution over there. So Foucault is going there as a journalist by Corriere della Sera, which is a centrist newspaper. So he goes to Iran to do what these days would call like vlogging. Every day he would write what he sees there. He arrives in Iran a week after a massacre where the regime is massacring protesters, but he sees more and more and more students and people actually going out ready to fight the regime. Notice that by that time, no one has heard the name Khomeini in the West. Khomeini has not yet gone to Paris. So I'm cutting a bit of slack to Foucault at that point. But Foucault goes to places, he asks people, what do you want? And everyone tells him the same thing. We want the Shah to go, and we want an Islamic regime, an Islamic republic. In October, Khomeini goes to Paris, and he's very clever. Actually, his translators are very clever. He's giving his sermons, and the translators translate different things to the Western audiences. So he's playing with the French intellectuals. He talks things about emancipation, Western imperialist, and what he actually says in Farsi is, whatever the Islamist message is. But of course, the French intellectuals are eating from his hand. They believe everything he likes.
It reminds me of how they translated Yasser Arafat. I mean, the same thing happened.
Yeah.
He would say, we want to wipe Israel off the face of the earth, and they would translate it two-state solution or something like that. Same thing. What they say in Arabic or their local language, what you read in English, unrelated.
So here comes the question then. What is the thing that fascinates Foucault in the revolution in Iran? Because again, clearly, very soon he realizes this is not a Marxist revolution. Iran has a strong Marxist movement, the Tudeh party, the Communist Party basically with a different name, but it is not on the driving seat. And yet Foucault says, I'm still fascinated. And here's why. Our audience will appreciate the philosophical message. He says, I'm fascinated by the religious zeal of the protesters because they're ready to sacrifice for something which goes beyond their rational, let's say, egoistic goals.
Yep.
They want to sacrifice and they're not sure exactly what they want to sacrifice for. And Foucault finds this fascinating. He says something like, sorry?
In a positive way.
In a positive way. And he says, I've heard many times in my life the term collective will. And he said, for the first time, I saw collective will walking in the streets. So he appreciates Islam as this communal bringing together force. So although these are dangerous times, he returns to Paris. A couple of, 2 months later, in November, he goes back to Iran. He wants to see more because it's, again, what you said in authenticity. It's like, you never see this in the West. You never see in the West these people who go above. They live for something bigger than themselves, literally. Now, let's be very fair to Foucault and to the people as they saw things at that time. The Iranian Revolution was a spectacle that should bring awe and fascination to people who are interested in revolutions. Because in a way, it is the most massive revolution in history. You have something between 10 and 12% of the population taking active part in the Iranian Revolution. To put this into perspective, the Russian Revolution, maximum 1%. Maximum 1%. And sure, the heavy lifting is done by people whose motivation was Islam, but it was something which was, we had never seen something like this before. So many people bravely standing up to a murderous regime. So the pressure is immense. Shah leaves in mid-January, and in early February, Khomeini lands in Iran. He flew from Paris. Interestingly, do you know who is the first VIP foreign visitor who visits Khomeini?
No.
Yasser Arafat. He is the first guest of honor. And which is the first country that recognizes Khomeini?
And let's remember, Yasser Arafat is a secular, Sunni, nationalist, terrorist, all the bad stuff. But he's not an Islamist, and he is not a Shiite. So but he sees the power in what is going on, and he sees that success, and he wants some of that success to rub off on him. Who's the first country? I don't know. Who's the first country?
Soviet Union. Immediately, Soviet Union recognizes Iran. And you know, Yaron, you've said in other shows, you said that Sunnis and Shiites, more important than their difference is how much they hate the West. And someone can hear that and say, come on, that cannot be. I've been told throughout my life that Sunnis and Shiites are, they hate each other more than anything else. Do you know that even the Muslim Brotherhood not only salutes Khomeini, they pay him respects as if you are the leader of the Muslim world. The Muslim Brotherhoods, which are, of course, Sunnis.
They immediately come out and in support of the revolution, and they view him as a leader. And I've said this many, many times, the revolution inspires Muslims. In Asia, you can find people writing in Indonesia and Malaysia and Philippines, which have huge Muslim populations, right? How much they're inspired by him. He inspires, as you know, maybe we'll talk about Afghanistan, but even more so in Pakistan, in India. This is many Muslims view this as the first step towards the fulfillment of prophecy. This is the fulfillment of the Islam taking over the world, and their view is, they have this view early on, at least. Later, things, when ISIS comes around, it shifts a little bit. But their view is, first we win, first we take over the world, first and then we'll figure out Shiite, Sunni, we'll settle our differences. But at that point, they basically all unite around this idea. Now, remember, this is a hot period, right? 77, 78, Sadr has just signed a peace deal with Israel. It's a huge betrayal, which gives massive energy to the Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt and across the Muslim world. Soviet Union's invaded Afghanistan and deposed, and trying to take it over to suppress an Islamist movement there. No?
Yes and no. So they attack Afghanistan a bit later in 1979, and this is when they broke relations with Khomeini, actually the other way around. But this creates a very interesting, and they depose a communist who was not anymore
aligned with them.
By the way, hope I'm not going to be, excommunicated from the movement. The Soviet intervention in Afghanistan was the one Soviet intervention that I think was the most justified of all Soviet interventions, because they remove a communist who was basically a crazy Saddam Hussein in the making, and they are also fighting people who were doing things that are unimaginable. They were killing girls. So when girls actually under the leftist government of Afghanistan would go to school, they would go and kill the teachers, the parents who dared to, and the girls. So, but anyway, that's the important thing, is that in the eyes of the world, Soviet Union anymore now is officially an imperialist country because it attacked Afghanistan. Yep. So now this radical Shiite movement is the big news, is the true revolutionary anti-colonial, and add to that a year later, the West supported Saddam Hussein attacks Iran. But before we get there, let's talk something very quickly about storming of the embassy and the taking of the American hostages. Why does Khomeini do that, which otherwise sounds completely stupid and suicidal? Death to America was not an Islamist slogan. Death to America was a leftist slogan. And the left was very powerful at that point. So Khomeini has to steal the thunder from the left. So not only he steals the slogan, he actually, by attacking the embassy, he says, I am now the arch anti-imperialist. We don't need you. We don't need the left. We don't need.
Well, we need you to support me in this attack, because he needs them until the early 80s when he completely gets rid of them. But he still needs them for the revolution. But I'm picking up. I'll do your work. You see, and I'll bring you social justice and all this. But let me start with the Americans.
And not only I'll bring you social justice, I'm going to bring you a constitution. And for the constitution, the model is 4 constitutions. Initially, they bring them the French and the Belgium one. They said, no good. And then they bring them constitutions of China and of communist Bulgaria. And this is why in the Iranian constitution, of course, any secular reference to Marxism, they change it to to reference to Islam. But if you see their constitution, it has this clause 154, which explains why Iran still today and forever, as long as the Islamic Republic exists, it is going to be an aggressive imperialistic force. Because and by the way, this is a very good book, The Black Wave. I know one of your viewers sent a super chat the other day. So listen this article clause in the Iranian constitution. So the Islamic Republic will support the just struggles of the oppressed against the oppressors in every corner of the globe. So as long as anyone is oppressed anywhere, the Iranian Republic, by its constitution, has a duty to support them. So when Trump says, Iran will promise it will not help Hezbollah, Iran cannot do this. If Iran does this, it violates its constitution. Clause 154.
Yeah, pretty amazing, and just relevant right now because it looks like any minute now Iran will launch missiles against Israel. So, so it's just closed its airspace, and I guess the Israelis are getting ready. Which I would say, under different circumstances, just to shift topics, I would say might be a good thing because then Trump might walk away from the deal. But knowing Trump, I don't think Iran could do anything and he would still commit to the deal. So
and you saw his tweet a couple of hours ago.
Yes.
He was scolding Israel for hitting Hezbollah.
Yes.
Anyway,
yes.
Back to our topic. We could also talk, but that's maybe for another time. There is some flirting between Islam and radicals also in the United States. Islam and Black Power, particularly through the Nation of Islam, later with Malcolm X when he left the nation. But that's for another time. We can talk
that's
about.
Early. That's in the that would be the 60s.
In the
50s,
60s. In the 60s.
Yeah.
But I mean, through all this post-colonial imperialism,
comes to the United States. I don't know if he interacts. I don't think he interacts with any American leftists.
Sorry, who?
Saeed Qutb, but I'm not pronouncing it right. Probably Qutb.
Yeah, let's discuss this at some other point because that's another fascinating. That's another fascinating story.
Yes,
the Black Power and Third World and all that stuff. Speaking of weird people who have weird allowances, Fidel Castro also is a big supporter and a friend of Iran during Khomeini and during Khamenei. Go figure.
Yep.
Anyway,
no, I mean, doesn't surprise me at all. It's a common enemy. There's a massive common enemy involved here. So the revolution has happened. Iran comes about. What happens to the leftists in Iran?
Something they literally they are destroyed. They are destroyed in 1983. They massively they do massive arrests of the leadership of the Communist Party. Under torture, obviously, they admit imaginary things that they are spies, enemies, and all that stuff. Many of them are actually killed. And this did not become a lesson for the left. Anytime the Islamists and the left meet, it does not end well for the left. It's probably, if people are eating, don't go and check out what happened to the last secular leftist president of Afghanistan when the Taliban entered Kabul. Horrible, gruesome stuff. It's like you have, on the one hand, 20th century authoritarianism, but on the other hand, you have like medieval level of barbarism and medieval level of disconcern for any idea of rules or whatever. And if I use this language, medieval, all that stuff, I would very much offend any Western academic post the late 1970s because they've been telling us that we are not allowed to use such terms because such terms would be the crime of Orientalism. So you know who am I referring to here, right?
Yeah, but before we get that, I have a question. I don't know the answer to this. Does Foucault, after Khomeini comes to power and some of this happens, does Foucault ever write about Iran again? Does he ever change his mind? Does anything happen there?
It's absolutely fascinating because, as it happens with most of these leftists, once they have a different signing object, they don't care. Now, the truth is that Foucault gets a lot of pressure for that. It becomes something like a stain in his conscience, because remember, this is a time where, particularly in France, feminism is strong. And people don't comprehend how bad the regime of the mullahs was already from early on. It did not only kill women for things like, I don't know, abortion or whatever. You could actually be killed for adultery. And adultery does not mean you cheat on your wife or your husband. It means you make out with someone when you're not married. So at that time, there were still around some feminists who really cared about women's rights, and they were asking Foucault, what the hell was that? And he would obfuscate. I mean, always Foucault, when he talks, he obfuscates, but he would say, look, I was impressed by the collective will of the Iranian people. Now, what happens then to individuals is a different thing. And you know what? You are also, today would say, Western-centric, because you are butthurt because this revolution did not go by your own standards. So sure, you know, women get stoned, but at the end of the day, for a few precious hours and weeks on the streets, the Iranians transcended themselves to a collective. So Foucault used this language that, you know, don't bother me what happened after. We had an emancipatory event. Notice there's something very hippie-like there, right? Like this emotionalist, like we had a good time. We had a good time. And, you know, what happened then, reality is basically someone else's problem.
So you were moving on to an American academic, a Palestinian immigrant to the United States who becomes head of the Middle East Studies Department at Columbia University and really becomes one of the most influential academics in America, starting in the 1980s and reshapes a lot of the woke. You know, the modern left has been dramatically influenced by him.
So till now, we have built, let's say, the foundation of explaining how does radicalist political Islam come around with the support either of actual leftists, as in Iran, or with leftist schemes and leftist narratives. Now let's see how this ideology takes over not just Lebanon or Iran, but how does it take over Western institutions? And the key figure here is an academic called Edward Said. And in 1978, he writes perhaps the most influential book of social sciences of the last many decades, a book called
Orientalism.
Orientalism, yeah. It's been so many. So there's no curriculum in any field of social science that does not include Orientalism. So I want people to understand this. It's not that if you were taught Middle Eastern studies, you'd have to be taught Orientalism. Even if you're taught policing, you are going to have Orientalism in your reading list. So what's the big idea in Orientalism? What does Edward Said, of Palestinian origin, by the way, what does he claim there? He claims that to understand yourself, you have to compare it and to contrast it with an other, with someone who is different. And you are whatever this other is not. So we have these dualities, let's say bitter, sweet, cold, hot. And he said we in the West, we have created this duality with these other people over there in the East, or what, as they used to call it, the Orient. And the duality is, we are superior, they are inferior. We are civilized, they are savages. We are rational, they are mystical. And if you want to see an example of what Orientalism looks like, think of the first 10 minutes of the movie Aladdin, the Disney movie. Kids of my generation will remember it, early 90s. So in the first 10 minutes, you have this song called Arabian Nights, and you go through a bazaar in somewhere in the East. By the way, it's supposedly in the Arabian world, but it also looks like India because, again, Said would say, in the mind of the West, all these are the same. India, Arab, you're all the same. And you hear the song that says, one of the lyrics says something like, they will cut off your ear if they don't like your face. It's barbaric, but hey, it's home. So it portrays the Arabs as these barbarians.
Yeah.
And then you see this bazaar where everyone is like a scoundrel, a thief, but then you have a snake charmer. Then you have the Arab guards, the police, who are these brutes with these caricature big noses and they want to cut the hand of Aladdin. If you think Jafar, the villain in Aladdin, he looks very much like an Arab, whereas Aladdin and Jasmine look like Westerners. Or the Arab ruler, what's the name of the father of Jasmine? He's gullible, he's easy to fool. So Said would say, don't go in any propaganda, don't go that far. See in popular culture how we portray the Arabs. So the important point is, in our mind, the Arabs are always the same, stagnant, static barbarians, whereas we are always progressing, developing, becoming better. And because Said was influenced by Foucault, he said, this is not a joke. This is not for us to laugh on the opening of the Aladdin. Because, he says, knowledge creates power. And when we see the Arabs like that, and when we judge them for their real or imagined backwardness, then this knowledge becomes a tool of imperialism. So knowledge, Orientalism, becomes power imperialism. This is a typical Foucauldian scheme. So what is the message of all this? At the end of the day, be careful when you judge the other, the non-Western, because when you judge them, you perpetuate Western norms of superiority, you perpetuate imperialism. And this also means that every time a white European has something to say about the Orient, he has within him the stain of racism, of what today we would call Islamophobia, and of imperialism. This means that we can never reach the truth about the Orient because our judgment is clouded by imperialism. And you can see where this goes, right? This can open up the Pandora's box that we can never criticize the Arab terrorists, for example. Mm. And also this means that we owe them just to shut up because it's not up to us to judge them with our own standards. This is where Orientalism and this is where this thinking actually led. And I think you can see, our audience our viewers can see how this created this inability to say anything and to make any value judgment about these societies.
And of course, much of whatever is bad about these societies is our fault because of colonialism. And, the fact that so many of the Arabs came to the West to learn, to study. And, and they took back the ideas, and those ideas became the nationalist and fascist movements within the Arab world. They committed horrible crimes. Look, we supported the Shah. Look, and he was objectively bad. And look at the horrors that created. So, in Said's view, everything bad that the Arab world or the Oriental world, as he sees it, does is the fault of Western civilization. It's the fault of the West. So that's another reason why we can't judge him. Right? I mean, we can't judge him because there's no such thing as objective reality and objective truth. I mean, he's a thorough postmodernist. But beyond the fact that there's no objective reality, objective morality, It's all our fault anyway. I mean, we've been, the word Orientalism. I'm not sure exactly when it was coined, but it was used extensively during the 19th century by people who went to the Arab world or to India to paint, to bring back portraits of them and to study them. And, like you study from Foucault's perspective, like you study another species, you look down on them. And this is, he's really attacking and hateful of the West and everything that it stands for.
And interestingly, of course, the West is to blame. He's not to blame for the fact that he sided with the side in the PLO that did not want the two-state solution. It's not his mistake that he was part of throwing away the biggest opportunity that the Palestinians had for a state. It's never his responsibility. It's always someone else's. Notice, by the way, this is a very racist view. It completely takes agency away from the post-colonial subjects. Everything that happens to them is done to them by someone else. They don't have agency. It's literally dehumanizing.
And this is how the left, the new left, with post-colonial studies, which all come from Said. I mean, think about what that means in terms of the Israeli-Palestinian issue, right? Israel is the colonizer. Why? Because, I don't know, 50% of the population has European origins somewhere in the back. Again, racism, right? Therefore, they are the colonizers, and therefore they are the bad guys. They, by definition, are the bad guys. It doesn't matter what they do. It doesn't matter what deal they cut. It doesn't matter what compromise they make. It doesn't matter how well they make Palestinian lives. It's irrelevant. By just being of European descent in that place in the Middle East, or just being a part of Western civilization. We view Israel as virtuous because it's a bastion of Western civilization. Foucault, the post-colonialists, the new left view it exactly the opposite. Because it's a post of Western civilization, that's what defines it as evil. And the enemies of Israel are the enemies of the West, and that's great. That's why they love them.
And also notice how ahistorical this reading is. People should go back and watch our episode on the 1948 war. The founding of the State of Israel is an anti-colonial achievement because it included the struggle against the British colonialists. The British were against the Israelis. They were fighting the Haganah. So it's even with these weird terms, still their narrative does not make sense.
Yep. Yeah. So post-colonialism, Edward Said came to dominate American academia. All these leftists, they've all read it, whether in origin or in the translation of the many articles and books that have been written since that have taken this post-colonialism stuff and chewed it. It is just a part of academia. So it's not surprising that after October 7th, the response wasn't even, let's wait and see what Israel does. The response was, Israel's committing genocide. The Palestinians are the good guys. Israel hadn't done anything yet. It didn't matter.
Do you know what this reminds me? Soon we're going to talk about the United Kingdom as the ground zero these days of this alliance between leftists and Islamists. One of the institutions around which this alliance developed was a group called Stop the War Coalition. Now, in my youth, I was around these guys, and I always thought that this group, Stop the War, came around to oppose the war in Iraq. So I said, okay, for what? I mean, that was a legitimate, let's say people would say this is not a good war. I could understand it. But turns out this group was formed 10 days after 9/11, before the war in Afghanistan, when there was the mere idea that the United States might defend themselves against the country that gave refuge to the 9/11 terrorists. Before the UK even attacked Afghanistan, they formed the Stop the War coalition. So it's similar with what you said. Before Israel replies to October 7, we already have the title, genocide is happening.
Yeah, it is amazing. Okay, so let's maybe this is a good point to before we get into a few concretes like what's going on in England and queers for Palestine. Maybe let's summarize in the sense of okay, so what is the nature, what drives the left and the Islamists together more broadly and particularly today, across the West?
Yes, so for the left, again, let's have this meta view. Let's not lose that. The fact that the left had to align with the Islamists and with the Islamist cause is a result of the left's absolute defeat.
Yep.
The left has no cause in the Western societies. It has no vision. It has no positive program. It has no political vision for the West. So now it has turned just to being
because communism, even in their mind, communism has failed. Communism, Marxism at least, the Marxist version of communism has failed. And this is what we talked about last time. We talked about, the Frankfurt School, and we haven't talked yet about postmodernism, but they're all grappling with the consequences of the big project failed. And we need to somehow what's the new project, and they have nothing, and so that's part of it is this massive failure, disintegration of the left,
disintegration and lashing out and against your own society because you feel bitterness against your own society. You feel bitterness. I know this because that's what I felt when I was left. I felt bitterness towards my uncle who was working 2 jobs. And he could have a car and a quasi-decent house. Like, why are you enjoying football and not be on the barricades? You're lashing out against your society. And who is the vanguard in the attack, in the frontal attack against the West today? There are not any more communist guerrillas. There's no more Che Guevara. There is no more cultural revolution in China. There is no more Vietnam. Today, the vanguard of the attack against the West is Islam, political Islam. And the left had zero moral inhibitions in siding with political Islam on its frontal attack against the West. If this is not the biggest bankruptcy in the history of the bankrupt movements in the history of humanity, I don't know what it is.
So before we turn to the UK, you have done a little bit of research on queers for Palestine. So, I mean, which is, of course, this bizarre idea, queers for Hamas. Essentially, Hamas is known for throwing homosexuals off of buildings and killing them and in disgusting and horrific ways. Generally, Islam, or the political Islam certainly, is very anti-homosexuality and gayness in any or queerness in any form. This is the most of all the combinations. This seems to be the weirdest because if they went to these places, they themselves know what would happen to them. The Palestinians are not tolerant of this kind of behavior. The religionists, at least, within them. So, how do we explain this phenomenon?
Well, to explain this phenomenon, let's listen what Queers for Palestine actually have to say. So I found a couple of these people who are serious, for a lack of a better term. And first of all, let's say they actually exist. So I thought that Queers for Palestine is a creation of the right to make fun of them. They actually exist. So I want to read a short paragraph of one of these Queer for Palestine people. And we will see that here what we have is a deep failure of thinking and an epistemological failure in the West. But let's see what they have to say. So this guy writes in Reddit, I am a queer for Palestine. I acknowledge that Hamas and Palestinians generally hold pretty abhorrent views on gay people. And if I was openly gay over there, they would probably do awful things to me. Now, pause the quote. This is already for me fascinating. This already oozes altruism. I am supporting people who I know that they would kill me. Let's go on. Then he says, I don't want to discuss the whole Palestinian thing, blah, 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 blah. So why do I support a people who would want me dead if they knew who I was? It's pretty simple, really. The right to self-determination extends to all people, not just to those who I agree with. It's not really my place to step in and say, no, you people are too homophobic, you're not allowed to make your own decisions. Again, pause here. Notice the non-judgmentalism. This poor kid has been taught that I am not allowed to judge these people. Do you see the poison of Edward Said here?
But he would judge me. He would judge you. Why would he judge us? Because...
And he knows that the Hamas guy would judge him and he would kill him. But he says, I cannot judge them. Like, I
would
think
judge us
genuinely...
because we're Western civilization. So he's allowed to judge us because we're within his in-group. We're within the world in which he lives. He can't judge outside of it.
Exactly. And I genuinely feel pain for this kid because he looks to be intellectually sincere. But let's continue. To me, that's a recipe for disaster, if judging other people, and justification for a repeat of the colonialism of previous centuries. Pause again. So, Palestinian killing gays is a lesser crime than using the philosophical, let's say, scheme that gave us colonialism, which is judging and using universal standards. Continue. There are many sovereign countries today that are as homophobic as Palestine. True, by the way. That doesn't make any other country justified in invading and occupying the people there. So that's why I think it's wrong to say that gay people should automatically be against self-determination for the Palestinian people just because they're homophobic. So I found this actually very, very revealing. It unlocks for me understanding this phenomenon. These are kids who are taught with the idea that there is no universal right and wrong. We cannot agree what is right and wrong, so not even live and let live. Die and let live, but don't judge.
I mean, what's interesting about this is how universal this view is. How universal this view of kind of moral relativism when it comes to different cultures is. I mean, I remember my father telling me that, right? My father was a center-left, smart, but he said, you can't judge other cultures. Their morality is their morality. You can't judge them. I mean, I almost went back to him with, so we can't judge Hitler? And if I did, he would say, yeah, but that's our culture. That's Western culture. So you can judge them within, where that comes from, how you even... how you make any sense of that in your own mind epistemologically makes no sense. But this is common among, this is common out there. This is not unusual, this perspective.
And it's absolutely tragic because it takes away any tool that you have to defend yourself. Yep. Like this guy doesn't even have the instinct of, I need something to defend myself against these guys. And he's completely, the tools have been taken away from him.
And all he's got left is oppressor-oppressed. All he has left is what the new left has been advocating, this intersectionality, oppressor-oppressed mentality. Palestinians are oppressed. That's it. They're the good guys. Now we just need to figure out who's oppressing them. Oh, obviously it's Israelis. And they're successful, they're rich. The techies that, they must be bad. How else? And if you have a zero-sum view of the world, which most leftists do in one way or the other, then obviously the Israelis are rich because they oppress the Palestinians.
I mean, how crazy that Ayn Rand, with a couple of concepts, has captured all this. Because at the end of the day, this is also altruism. Yep. Because the
Yes.
one side is stronger than the other, we have to side with the other, even if they would kill me. That's what this poor guy says.
Yep. Absolutely.
Okay, shall we finish with the walking embodiments?
Let's talk about the United Kingdom, a subject you know a lot about.
I'll just read a very short quote. People should try to guess who this person is. This is from a talk in 2009. So by that point we know who Hamas is, we know who Hezbollah is. Quote: "Tomorrow evening it will be my pleasure and my honor to host an event in Parliament where our friends from Hezbollah will be speaking. I've also invited friends from Hamas to come and speak as well, blah, blah, blah. The idea," he guesses that there might be some pushback, so he says, "the idea that an organization that is dedicated towards the good of the Palestinian people and bringing about long-term peace and social justice and political justice should be labeled as a terrorist organization by the British government is really a big historical mistake." So who is this guy who says these deranged things? Who do you think it is? Is it a fringe activist? Is it maybe a Muslim? Is it maybe someone who is an agent of the Muslim Brotherhood? No. This is a guy who came close to being the Prime Minister of the UK only a few years after he said that. This is Jeremy Corbyn, the leader, the back then leader of the Labour Party. Our friends from Hamas, our friends from Hezbollah, who are building a society of social justice and of peace in the region. And that's why I call the UK the ground zero.
Thought Criminal got it right. Frank thought it was Tony Blair. No, it doesn't. That's not Tony Blair.
No.
Tony Blair is better than that. Let's see. Equal to reality, said Jeremy Corbyn. Christopher said Mayor of London. Could have been the Mayor of London, but no. I mean, that would be too obvious. It's much more interesting that it's not a Muslim.
So you have a leftist, a guy who built his career as a leftist, praising Hezbollah. And you, Yaron, knows, what does Hezbollah stand for? What does the name stand for? The Party of God.
Yep.
The Party of God. So
this is a movement dedicated to bringing Islam not just to Lebanon, not just to Israel, not just to the Middle East. This is a party in its constitution, its original constitution, dedicated to the conquest of Islam's conquest of the world. And to many Westerners, that seems, they can't be serious. No, these are like James Bond villains. They really believe in global conquest. They really do believe that Allah has given them the world, and it's there for the taking. And Hezbollah and Hamas and Islamic Jihad and Al-Qaeda and ISIS and all these organizations, Muslim Brotherhood, at their base, all of them, and the Iranian regime. This is why the Iranian regime can stand up to the United States, because it believes that history and Allah and the future is theirs. They will dominate the world because they are the final religion. There is no religion after Islam. This is it, and they take it seriously. This is religion fanaticism at its extreme. So for somebody like Jeremy, for a leftist to hail these people is stunning, but it shows the depths of his own hatred.
And he does this in 2009. He
Yep.
doesn't do it in 1988, where you could say, okay, we don't know them that well. We haven't seen much. He does this in 2009. So the interesting thing in the UK is that the most prominent anti-Semitic voices come from the left. People might have heard a guy called George Galloway. He's a guy who was kicked out of Labour because, for various reasons, but to understand how much he hates Israel. He abstained from a vote that would recognize the Palestinian state in the parliament, because if he voted for a Palestinian state, this would also assume that he would recognize that there is such a thing as an Israel state.
Yep.
So he says, I prefer not to vote for a Palestinian state if by this I don't pollute my hand by recognizing that there is this Jewish state. Someone mentioned the mayor of London. There used to be a mayor of London who was called Ken Livingstone.
Yep.
also a superstar behind the Stop the War coalition, which gave us this huge mobilization around the war in Iraq in 2003. When he was mayor of London, he hosted Sheikh al-Qarawadi. Sheikh al-Qarawadi is one of the most prominent Muslim Brotherhood intellectual leaders. And Ken Livingstone, again, Red Ken, a guy who made the name in the British left. He was okay with giving his sanction and having as his guest a prominent Muslim Brotherhood leader. The National Union of Students in the UK from the 1970s, it had banned many Jewish organizations. Why? Because it has a no platform for racists, and it claims that since the United Nations voted that Zionism is racism, every Zionist is a racist. Again, this happened under the auspices of the British left. So in the UK, you have this toxic mix of the Stop the War coalition, the support for Palestine, Muslim groups that are basically fronts from the Muslim Brotherhood, and this horrendous, disgusting organization called the Socialist Worker Party. And within this toxic mix, it's very difficult to see this and not understand, not accept that this is a Trojan horse. And I don't want to come up with conspiracy theories that there's foreign money behind, but by the result of what I see there, this is a Trojan horse. This is how not like the worst form of Islamism, like Muslim Brotherhood level of Islamism, has penetrated leftist groups, the student unions, and these days it is migrating to the Green Party. Now the Green Party becomes the center of this unholy red-green alliance because Corbyn got the boot from the Labour Party. The Labour Party is not radical enough for these crazes, although it recognized the Palestinian state to congratulate perhaps the Palestinian leadership for October 7th. So this is the example of where all these things that we discussed, these are the walking embodiments. The people who give talks, Jeremy Corbyn gives talks, and below you see the flags of Hezbollah and flags. People disagree. They say, although this looks like the ISIS flag, others say, oh, it's not the ISIS flag, it's a Muslim Brotherhood flag. Like that's the space of where the discussion is. So this is the UK. This is the UK today. This is the UK.
So what's happening right now? I mean, there's this not new, but the takeover, if you will, of the new leftist party, the Green Party in the UK.
Yes. So again, if you want these days to have some appeal to the left, you need to be a Hassan Piker, you need to be that caliber of a person. And the Green Party has a guy called Jack Polanski, who is this type of leader. He understands that in order to attract support, I need to fall to the lowest low of the gutter. And this is what happens. What happens in the UK. Now I have the suspicion that I confuse his name with that director. No, Zach Polanski. I called it right. Yeah.
So and you know, are the Greens a rising force?
They have a lot of momentum. They have a lot of which it's what the Labour Party doesn't have. It's the only force of besides the populist right, let's say, which has this momentum. And if you see, particularly its campaigns in smaller provinces, often it runs Muslim candidates. There's nothing wrong with that, except that most of these people, their number one subject they talk about is Gaza. It has nothing to do even with environmental campaigns or with what they're going to do about the local community. It is always Gaza, boycott, disinvest, and all that stuff.
So is there anybody, the people on the left who recognize the danger of this and who are, speaking up against it? Is there any hope for a more rational
Do you see any hope? So if you see, for example, who are supposedly the serious leftists in the, let's take the US, Ezra Klein. You see the New York Times, you see perpetuating the libel that there is a genocide in Gaza.
Yep.
You see him saying that Hassan Piker is not the enemy.
Yep.
So why would there be any hope? You see Varoufakis paying
Yep.
solidarity visits to the Iranian embassy. Solidarity visits. So why would I ever believe these guys when they tell me they care about women? Why would I ever believe these guys when they tell me they care about gay people? So no, I don't see any hope. But the silver lining is these people can never fool us again. They can never claim that they have any moral high ground because we've seen them, we see who they are, and there's no return from there.
And in particular in Europe, the left is insignificant. I mean, it's as compared to the populist right and to center-right parties. I mean, which country in Europe has a rising tide of real left? I'm not talking about kind of the social democratic, centrist types, but
well, you could say France with Mélenchon, who
yeah, but
again there you have because add to that the whitewashing of Russia. So there you have even an extra layer of degeneracy.
yes, but he's going to lose. I mean, he's not going to win, right? I mean,
Oh yeah, of course, yeah, he's not gonna win.
So my point is a rising left. You've got, I mean, Spain is still ruled by a socialist government right now, but he's very unpopular. And if they had an election right now, I don't think he would win. I can't think of a European country where the trend, the rising, the expected victor in future elections is a real leftist party.
Yeah, no, there's nothing. Around circa 2010, 2012, you had the Syriza in Greece, Podemos in Spain, Mélenchon in France, around 2012. These days, no. So at least, again, that's the silver lining. Anyone who has an iota of a moral compass is disgusted by the left, and this is what they deserve. All these decades, they had this facade of, oh, we are progressive for the Enlightenment, we care about women. No, you are the people who stand with the worst of the worst forces of history, who want to take us back to the dark ages, and this is who you are.
Yeah, and I think even in the United States, where they are going to win in the midterms and maybe the presidency, people hate the left. The only thing that makes the left viable, the only person who makes the left viable is Donald Trump. And for those of you who don't want the left to succeed in America, the worst thing you could have done is support Trump. I mean, actively support Trump, because Trump is the best thing that's ever happened to the left in the U.S.
Yeah.
Because in comparison, I mean, put aside who you think is worse, the fact is the American people didn't want the left, but now they don't want Trump. So what have they got left with?
The question is, what's going to happen when these kids who had their brain destroyed by postcolonialism and all that stuff, although this shouldn't let them off the hook, they have free will.
Yeah.
But anyway, when these kids become even more the opinion makers and they become more of the percentage of the political body, what's going to happen? But who knows?
And think how many of those kids ultimately also became goipers, right? So it goes both ways, right? If you destroy their minds, it's not clear they'll be leftists, but they will be destroyed.
Yeah.
Their minds will be destroyed. So they'll go either way.
True.
All right. This is great. Hopefully you guys get a deeper understanding of the Unholy Alliance. And I apologize for misspelling holy. I think I fixed it now. And for calling it a holy alliance when it should be an unholy alliance. Although it could be a holy alliance, I guess. You could go either way on that one. Yeah, thanks for. Let me remind you guys that these shows are made possible by you. Nikos's time is valuable. My time is valuable. We put a lot of time into these shows and prepping them and getting them done. And we're splitting the super chat. So it's 50-50 on the super chat. So, so this is why the goal for these shows is significantly higher than the fundraising goal for my shows alone, because then you're only paying me. Now you're paying both of us. So please consider that as you consider whether you are able and interested in supporting the show and how much you're going to.
And not to guilt people, but this show required to read 5 books and 2 articles, but even more than that, it required to sacrifice watching World Cup games.
Really?
So, yeah.
Oh my God. I mean, yeah, there's not enough money you could put in to compensate for that sacrifice.
There is if people send super chats.
Okay, so so what games have you watched?
That's the thing. I haven't watched any proper game. One could say it's because they are late.
Yeah.
But that's not the only reason. I don't sacrifice my sleep because I want to wake up and be
Yeah.
fresh.
And you're working.
But come on, this is a joke of a World Cup. All these teams, like what is it like? Qatar, Switzerland, like Canada, Bosnia. Like no offense to Canadians, like Canada, Bosnia. Seriously, that's a world.
No, I only watched one game, and it was Brazil-Morocco. And I was surprised at how good the Moroccans were.
Morocco is good. In the last World Cup, they made it to the semifinals, and yeah. So no, I wasn't surprised.
They played better than Brazil. You know, crisp passing. I mean, really, they dominated the mid. You know, they dominated the passing. They were really good and tough. You know,
Yeah.
and the Brazilians don't seem to have it. They don't have the spark.
Look,
It was
me
a
and you
beautiful goal,
are
though.
generations. We've seen Brazil teams that this team is like, come on, that's not Brazil. Like I've seen Romario, I've seen Ronaldo, I've seen Rivaldo. I've literally seen Rivaldo play live in a game. So yeah, come on, who cares?
My first World Cup was Pelé 1970. So
Yeah.
I was a little kid, but I remember black and white television watching.
Arguably, people who have watched many teams, they say that was perhaps the best team, the most dominant Brazil team, at least since the 50s or in the modern era.
Yeah, hard to tell, you know, how to compare across eras, but yes, it's an amazing team. All right, let's see. So we have some questions. We have a way to go to reach our goal. So particularly, you know, you can do a sticker, which is without a question, and you can ask questions. Questions are great because that way you get Nikos and I to talk about what you want us to talk about. We have a few. Let me thank the stickers first. Enric, thank you. Self-subscriber, $50. Really appreciate that. Let's see. Who else do we have? Carolina from Mexico. Thank you, Carolina. Exit and Zach and D-Meta and Anne. Thank you, Anne and John. All right, that's the stickers. We could do a lot more stickers. You guys could come in with a lot more.
So Mexico, I respect. Mexico, they have this iconic stadium. I remember cool Mexican teams from the past. Hugo Sanchez. Yes, Mexico. Okay, it should be in the World Cup, no question. But
Yes.
Qatar.
Qatar, yeah, they didn't win a single game last time when they hosted, and didn't they? Did they lose to so I think 1-0 or something like that? Wasn't even
No. They equalized with
equalized.
something that looked more like an own goal at the end.
Okay, all right. So yes, there's going to be a round of 32. So it's also
Round
very
of 32.
long.
32 used to be all the teams of the World Cup. What is a round of 22?
I know.
Now the question would be if there are all these teams there, where is Greece? Okay.
Where's Italy?
Where is Italy? 3rd consecutive World Cup.
Yeah, which is bizarre, right? All right, enough soccer. Unless you ask, you can ask a super chat about football, and we can talk about that. Let's go to super chat. We've got Shazbot for $200 wants us to review a song.
Which song?
It's R.E.M. R.E.M. The song is called Stand.
Okay, wait. I assume this is for next time, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So
Okay.
for Sunday, next Sunday, R.E.M. Stand.
Oh yeah, I'll write it down later. Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Shazbot. Appreciate that. Same person who had us do
Of
Starman.
course, I remember. He's also he's also on my Patreon and he asks good questions. So yes.
Good. Good. All right. Wes gave $100 and says, I just finished Mr. Sunshine a few minutes ago. What a wonderful show. One of the best I've ever seen. I'm glad you agree with me, Wes. I love that show.
Good. I started watching it. I don't remember why I stopped, but it seems to be the one thing every objectivist likes. I thought the ultimate objectivist film was Whiplash, but I think there are more people who suggest Mr. Sunshine even than Whiplash.
Whiplash. I know a lot of objectivists who didn't like it. I know
And
quite
they
a
are
few
wrong.
I mean, that's fine, but I know a lot of objectivists who didn't like it. And Leonard, made a comment about Whiplash, which also already sways, I think, a lot of people. But
I remember where I was when I heard it. I think he said he went back to back and watched it 5 times.
yeah, something like that. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I'm with
Yeah.
Leonard on that 100%.
So, Mr. Sunshine, I take 100% credit for. No objectivist has never mentioned it before I did. I was the first objectivist, as far as I know, to watch it and to tell people about it, and it's kind of spread since then. So,
And you also set a trend with a most violent year.
I really like that movie. Yes, but again, I know people who don't. But I think, but I rewatched it a few months ago, and I liked it again. So, it wasn't a fad. All right. Ali Musa. Ali Musa. Okay, there you go. How to identify a cult? Do you have a one question that can identify cultists?
By the way, let me say something here. You know, when I was learning about objectivism and I heard that objectivism is a cult, being in the objectivist movement, it's so not even close to a cult, which is it's so I for some time I had this tweet, or I used to say this in the Daily Objective back in the day with Raz, like, if we're a cult, we're the worst cult ever. Like, how is this a cult where we can't we disagree all the time? And
Yeah, yeah. How do you identify a cult? I mean, I think the characteristics of it, as compared to just any tribe, I mean, you've got a charismatic leader who basically everybody succumbs to. I mean, they do what he tells them to do, and it's very much oriented around a personality. If you think about all the cults, there's always somebody, some charismatic leader in the middle of it. There's a certain mindlessness to it. People are just doing what they're told to do. What else would characterize a cult?
discussion is discouraged, serious discussion. Everything is because I said so.
Yeah. So any challenges to the dogma is completely discouraged. You can't challenge the dogma, and the dogma is the cult leader. That is, he can change his mind, but you can't, and you can't question the leader. And if anybody takes initiative, that's another thing. If anybody within the cult takes initiative that was not endorsed by the leader, that's not acceptable. So every action has to be ultimately endorsed by the leader. They usually have a sexual component to them. I think almost every cult has some, the leader gets to sleep with a lot of the women in the cult. And I don't think there's one question. I don't think there's one question.
With the exception of the sexual part, this reminds me a lot of my experience in the Communist Party. Though in the post-Stalin era, there's not one leader, but the suffocating atmosphere where you look behind your back to say anything even remotely critical is something that, and it must have been way worse back in the day when the communist parties were more serious in terms of we're in the business of like, we're gonna kill you, we're gonna come to power with violence, and you better be careful.
Yeah, I mean, it's every authoritarian regime has that, right? The Nazis were certainly cult-like, but so I think what differentiates is the centrality of the leader. The death cults, suicide cults, cults that have committed mass suicide, millennial cults, but they're always led by some prophet-like character that is driving the whole thing.
And it is better to be wrong with the cult than right against the cult, even when it is to the interest of the cult. So it's a long story. I'll say it at some other point, but there was one point where I offered very, very valuable information to the Communist Party about something. And because I took an initiative to get that information that I was not explicitly told to do so, not only it was declined, but I was seen with a lot of disfavor, which is absolutely, absolutely crazy.
Yep. It's, but yes, so that's, all right. Shazbot says, another note on Starman. Starman was pro-abortion. Imagine if he had told Jenny, you're going to have my baby whether you like it or not. Instead, he said, if you do not want this baby, tell me now, I will stop it. In a sense, he can cause her to abort, yes.
I think what the reason why he says this is because otherwise it sounds a bit like, sexual violence, that he didn't ask her about it. So I think he just wants to be a gentleman and actually not to be seen like a creep even then. So this is and I'm saying this in a good way, political correctness, that otherwise it would be extra creepy and a violation actually of the woman.
Yeah, but that's the whole anti-abortion thing is creepy, and because it does say, that if a woman gets pregnant, even not in her fault, even not, that's it, she's stuck. That's finished. So it's kind of the anti-abortion movement is a creepy movement in the same kind of exactly that sense, particularly ones that won't have exclusion for incest and no exclusion for rape and no exclusion for all this stuff. That is real creepiness. All right, this is from Will. I can't pronounce his family name. All right. Will says, if the Qs for P care more about self-determination, queers for Palestine,
Queers for
Palestine care more about self-determination than human life, why the hatred for Israel protecting itself? If we shouldn't judge when, how do they decide to condemn, is calling Israelis Europeans the loophole. Yeah, it's calling them Westerners, Western civilization, right? It's the fact that they're otherwise. Notice, Christian Palestine don't have any issue with Muslims killing Muslims. Colonialists killing, colonialists supposedly killing, the post-colonialists killing post-colonialists, like the Somalis killing each other, Sudanese killing each other. Or the Iranians. Did any of these people say anything about the Iranian regime killing 40,000 people of their own people? No. It's only when a Western country, right? I mean, they make a big deal about the U.S. accidentally bombing the school in Iran, where supposedly 160 girls died. That is an outrage. But the Iranians killing 40,000 schoolgirls, in a sense, when the Girls' Revolution was on and they were killing them, not a peep. So it's all about the Western origin of the oppressor. If the oppressor comes from the East, they have no opinion about it.
And let me ask you something else. If self-determination is this magic word, then we should be with the Confederacy, right? Because they said self-determination is sacred. Forget what we're doing.
Yeah.
Self-determination is the trump card that nullifies everything else. So should these people then defend the statue of General Lee?
They don't. They don't, because again, in the West, and anything associated with Western civilization is sinful, almost by definition. That is it. It's not even color skin. It's, do you hold Western values? Israel is, technically hardly white. Half the population was born in Arab countries. Some of them in Africa, some of them in Arabia, and yet because they're in a country that represents Western civilization, they all get tarred with the colonialist label, and therefore they're the bad guys by definition. And it doesn't matter even if Palestinians didn't exist, Israel would be a sinful, horrible country. They would find some other way to attack Israel, some other reason.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Glenn says, great discussion. Love these shows. $100. Really appreciate that, Glenn.
Thank you, Glenn.
Selfie subscriber, what do you think wisdom means conceptually? Thanks for the show. $50. Thank you, selfie subscriber. Wisdom. You got any thoughts on wisdom?
I was just about to say thank you for the super chat, but that's a question for Yaron. So let's think about it. What would be the difference between wisdom? Okay, so it's like I'm using my mind and reason, but I've used it so much that now I can do it more effortlessly, and I'm also recognized as such.
I think it's your knowledge. Wisdom is a sign of integrated knowledge, and this is why it needs time, right? You probably are not wise when you're young, because you just haven't had the time to integrate your knowledge, integrate it with knowledge of history, with life experience, with your philosophical. So wisdom is the integrated, a knowledge that is well integrated. That's how I don't know if that's a formal definition, but that's how I described it. Wisdom that is well integrated into both life experiences and into the body of knowledge that exists out there, history, philosophy, and things like that. So
it looks like Ayn Rand thought that there was such a thing as wisdom, not as something the way you describe it, because allegedly when Leonard Peikoff turned 40, she said something like, okay, now I can take you seriously or something like that. So she believed in this, the importance of time in maturing your mind.
Yeah, she believed that Leonard has told this story, and he says, and she held that, a philosopher under 40 could not be taken too seriously. That you needed that time to be able to integrate, to mature, to develop. And she gave him a special gift on his 40th birthday, and kind of to recognize, okay, now you're a philosopher. Now I can take you seriously now. And yes, it's about time and maturing, and I think wisdom probably captures that. I'm just looking to see. I don't think she ever talks about wisdom as a qua wisdom. I don't think I don't have any quote where that is.
But you get Hugh Axton is not 35. He's older.
So wisdom comes with age. It's not. You can't be young. I mean, I guess you could be, but it's unusual to be young and wise. And when you see somebody who's young and wise, that's exceptional. There's something there. So it's about this massive integration that happens through experience and through knowledge.
And definitely, for example, Howard Roark is not wise. He makes mistakes that can be understood by various facts. That he wouldn't make these mistakes. He wouldn't again accept these Peter Keating commissions after 10 years, let's say.
He becomes wise through the novel.
Yeah.
As he learns the principle behind the dean.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Molten Splendor, $50. Thank you, Molten Splendor. Still a fun and interesting show. Thank you. Keep it up. Still, it's only like number 4 or 5. We intend to do hundreds of these and keep them fun and interesting. So,
but thank you. That's a meaningful comment, because we want to make this knowledge accessible, let's say.
Absolutely.
User friendly.
User friendly. Good. We're doing great on the super chat. Thank you guys, but keep it coming. We have not achieved the goal yet. So
Speaking of a program that provides value, what did I tell you 2 weeks ago? That the New York Knicks being in the finals, it's not a sporting development, it's a cultural development, it's a cultural news. And you saw that in the last 2 weeks.
you were right. You were right. I mean, New York is the enemy in my mind. So it's yeah. But and it's amazing what they did. I mean, you know, the West was clearly favored. Whoever was going to come out of the West, and the Knicks, and they came back from these ridiculous loss, and and it's not like San Antonio's badly coached, so it's pretty amazing what they did. So,
But you see again, wisdom. Like this is a team that has been growing for years. The Spurs were not mentally there
they're too
yet.
young. Yes,
Yeah.
they're young.
It will take time. The future is all theirs.
Yep. All right. I Like Numbers says, in response to the show, but yet in a two-party system, you'd still advise we vote this alliance in because of your interpretation of DIM that the right is the bigger threat. I guess that's to me. I don't view that. So I don't view the Democratic Party as this alliance completely. It certainly influenced this. There are elements of this alliance in the Democratic Party, but it's still, if you look at the number of, there are way too many senators on the left who are aligned with Islam, but it's a minority. It's not the majority of senators in the Democratic Party. And look, I don't want you voting for the left. I'd rather you voting for somebody better. But there is nobody better. So there's this alliance or the alliance of Donald Trump with Tucker Carlson. In spite of the fact that he repudiated him, I still think they're aligned. What do you want? Or J.D. Vance and Tucker Carlson. Let's take the next election. Let's say it's J.D. Vance versus, the likely candidate from the Democrats will be the governor of California. I don't think the governor of California is aligned with Islam, with Muslims. People within his party are. But I know what J.D. Vance and Tucker Carlson want to do. And I know who they hate. So, yeah, we're screwed. I mean, my message is we're screwed. My message is not, yes, let's vote for the left. Because I think the left are wonderful and they're amazing. And I think we're screwed. I mean, Kamala Harris, Donald Trump, you're screwed. No matter who you vote for, you're screwed. My argument was by voting for Trump, you bring out the worst elements on the left and you bring out the worst elements on the right. I think Kamala Harris would have been horrible. But the backlash against her would have been of a better right than a Donald Trump, because Donald Trump would have lost. Donald Trump losing would have sent a message to a certain type of right-winger, and the Republican Party would have had to recalibrate. And Donald Trump winning has brought out the worst elements in both left and right. So in my view, if this coalition of left and Islam wins in the long run in America, it's because you guys voted for Trump. Now, I don't hold that for Europe.
I was about to say, yeah.
I support voting for the Conservative Party in the UK because I think they're sane. They're not good. They're awful, although Kemi, I'm a fan of Kemi's. She'll probably disappoint me, but I'm a fan of hers. I would vote for Kemi. I would vote for the Conservatives. Even when they had bad people there, they just weren't despicable human beings like Trump, and they weren't undermining the very ideas that we believe in. If I was in Germany, I would vote for the center right. I don't know who I'd vote in France for. France is such a disaster. But given the alternative of a far leftist, I'd probably vote for the National Front, assuming that they moderate, that what's his name moderates. But I don't.
Bardella.
Yep. So you have to think about the context of the particular election. And you have to think about not just the next 4 years, and you have to think about the entire context of what it's about. I think, as I've said many times, Trump is a uniquely bad president, human being, and influence on American politics and on the Republican Party. And well, now it's too late because the influence is there. It's you guys who voted him to power, will suffer the consequences. We all will suffer the consequences of what is to come. If Hillary had won in 2016, the world would be a better place today, in my view.
That's
not
a
because
strong
of Hillary,
statement.
not because of Hillary, but because she wouldn't have made the world an image. I think if John Kerry would have won in 2004, I think the world would be a better place. But that's now we're shifting. But it's just, you have to look at the particular election. You have to look at what you think would happen afterwards. Think about, I'll just give you the John Kerry argument. Think about John Kerry being blamed for the financial crisis, the Democrats being blamed for the financial crisis. Think about the Democrats being blamed for the uprising in Iraq and for the failure in Iraq, because it's a completely different future. You don't get Obama. Wow, I mean, just not having Obama is a huge benefit to humanity, and because you don't get Obama, you don't get Trump, and if you don't get Trump, that's a huge benefit for humanity. So just that one election, Bush getting a second term, which everybody supported, certainly most objectivists did, had an incredibly destructive chain of events. So that's how I look at politics.
I understand, yeah. But to answer to our friends, yeah, in Europe, I am almost a single issue voter. Whatever is against the Left Islamic Alliance these days has my vote. With the proviso, I would not vote for prostitutes of the Kremlin. If I have any suggestion that the populist right has any links to Russia, that's a no for me.
Yep.
I'd rather stay at home.
Yeah, I agree with Nikos. And, I think the Islam problem is much bigger in Europe. I mean, orders of magnitude bigger than the United States. There's still only 3% of the American population. It's a threat locally in particular areas, and the jerks when they get into Congress. But that is not the issue shape. But in Europe, it's a civilizational battle, and it's a problem. And just like here, I think the Left-Islam alliance has the potential ultimately to bring about the rise of a really bad right wing, right? So fascism could rise as a response to this. Again, you have to think about how are these things playing off of each other. So the ideal today would be, and Europe also has more parties, so you can. It's not a two-party system. All right, that's a question I've answered. It's actually a question I've answered so many times, and I, like Numbers, has been here long enough that he's heard me give the answer so many times, and they don't accept it. Obviously.
And I think people don't understand something. When you claim that the projected future is that we're going to end up with right-wing authoritarianism, this does not even mean necessarily that in the balance you say this is worse than the left. It is just a projection that because the left is so bad and chaotic, soon it will lose, but it will lose to that type of person. So I don't understand what's so controversial there. I mean, I first heard you say this in a knock-on, and it was like a light bulb moment for me. Like, oh yeah, the left is so bad, therefore we're going to end up with a different type of authoritarianism because it's more digestible to the masses of people.
So it looks like, because we're talking about Trump, it looks like Trump is freaking out and insisting the deal gets signed on his birthday, which is today. And the Qataris are in Tehran right now, getting the Iranians to sign and convincing them not to launch on Israel. And Trump has said, even if the Iranians don't sign, I will sign. So he's willing to sign a deal even if the Iranians don't. I mean, it is so pathetic. His behavior over the last 2 months has been so pathetic that I don't get anybody who still thinks there's even a semblance of anything good about him. It's like a 3-year-old child. Anyway. That is the breaking news. All right. Fudraka says, Vietnam abandoned collective farming under U.S. embargo and immediately became a top three global rice exporter. Why doesn't an explicit example like this make socialists question their view?
Well, you, my friend, you mentioned something that is very specialized knowledge. How is it that the two, if not three different famines of Soviet Union did not persuade people? The Berlin Wall did not persuade people. The Armageddon of deaths in China did not persuade people. So it's the forest over there. What the example you give is a good one, but don't expect these people to be persuaded by anything. If they haven't seen the forest, they will not see the tree.
It's a moral ideal detached from reality. No facts can sway them. I mean, there's so many examples. The first village that in a sense pseudo privatized in China, and suddenly they had food, and the collectivization of farming in Venezuela, which used to be the breadbasket of South America, and then they started starving. I mean, it's over and over again. There's never been a collectivization of food production in a country where they haven't resulted in starvation.
By the way, Vietnam is another example of what we were saying earlier. When the Americans left, no one cared anymore one iota about what happened in Vietnam.
Yes. Yep. And that's another one where it was about the deal. We need a deal. So there's a deal between North and South Vietnam, and Kissinger got the Nobel Peace Prize for that deal. And a few months after,
a few months later, the fall of
a few months
Saigon.
later, North Vietnam invades, wipes South Vietnam out, and you get those horrible pictures of the United States leaving. And nobody thinks Kissinger bad. That nobody resents Kissinger about it. He's a Nobel Prize winner. Cool for him. Nobody actually draws conclusions from these things. Nobody actually learns anything.
No one. First of all, don't people make the connection that China is today a superpower, and one of the reasons is Kissinger's masterclass in taking China on our side against the Soviet Union, a Soviet Union which was already collapsing, by the way. So it's not that this had any serious effect in the Cold War.
Yep.
If we want to be serious.
All right. Ali Musa says people ignore that Arabs were surprised and made ignorant by 500 years of Turkish occupation.
That the leaders of the Arabs nationalism were not ignorant, and many of them were West educated.
Yeah, and I think that story. I just don't think that story is right. I mean, sadly, the Muslim world turned away from enlightenment certainly before the Turks invaded. They actually did it just before the Mongols invaded. If you want to blame anybody, I would blame the Mongols, not the Turks. But they were already turning away. Al-Ghazali, the Islamist philosopher who told them to turn their backs on reason and turn their backs on Greek philosophy and embrace Islamic mysticism, is much more responsible for Arab ignorance or Islamic ignorance than are the Turks. The Turks just followed through with it. They continued with that, and they reinforced it. But it was Islam itself. It came from Islam itself. It wasn't an external force. All right. Michael says, how is Jerry Seinfeld a billionaire? I never found him funny.
I disagree with that. He has something fresh almost in every episode. I think he's funny.
So
I mean,
Michael,
it doesn't matter what I think. Billions of people think he's funny. That's why he's a billionaire.
Exactly. Michael, what you think is irrelevant. Sorry to say, but what you find is funny is irrelevant. The reality is that the show Seinfeld is one of the most successful television shows in history. It was not only when it ran live was it hugely popular, but then in syndication, it was syndicated over and over and over again. When Seinfeld goes on the road and does stand-up comedy, he packs them in. I saw him once at a huge venue in Las Vegas with thousands of people, just massive. So he's earned it. Now if you don't find it funny, that's fine. I mean, a lot of people hate Apple products. It doesn't matter. Enough people love Apple products to make Apple worth what, $2-3 trillion. So what's relevant is the marketplace, not your particular evaluation. And in this case, you're in the minority. Now, I don't particularly like Seinfeld, so I'm a little bit with Michael. Although everybody in my family loves Seinfeld, I find him too Jewish neurotic, or too real in a sense. So I never liked it, but I get it. People find it funny, and good for Seinfeld for being that successful, given that people found it funny.
I haven't watched Seinfeld in the way I've watched Friends because I discovered it late in life. But philosophically, it's better than Friends. So it's almost equally funny, and it hasn't got the disgusting philosophical premises of Friends. So yeah, I would take Seinfeld over Friends.
So here's a question for you, because you've lived in England. You say you like Friends. Did you ever watch Coupling?
Season 1 of Coupling is the most underrated season. Is the most underrated comedy. I'm so surprised that someone knows Coupling. I found it by coincidence because I was working in a shop, and one day it had DVDs that were giving it away for £1. I got the DVD. These were the days before Netflix. It was absolutely hilarious, particularly this guy who doesn't appear, the kind of goofy guy who's like George in Seinfeld. Absolutely hilarious. Go watch Coupling, people. Season 1, though.
Absolutely.
After season 1, the funny guy is not there.
One of the the 2 or 3 seasons that he's in, only the last season he's out, like season 4 or something. So he's there beyond the first season.
Maybe. It's been many years. These were my first years in the UK.
No, I'm pretty sure because I've watched Coupling more than once, every season. So and I watched it when it first came out. So I watched it way back when it first arrived in the US. In some way, I think it's one of the funniest shows ever. I think it's hysterical. There are scenes that I still have fresh in my mind. And it plays with masculinity and femininity. It plays with sex. It makes fun of men, but then if it makes fun of women, it has some of the best little monologues, comedic monologues ever. So it's one of my favorite shows. And
these days, it will also be nostalgia material. You will see people smoking in pubs. It's gonna be like we used to be a real country.
Smoking in pubs is a big deal for Nikos.
Pubs were never. I remember. So people say name the one day that the West went downhill. Middle of July 2007 with a smoking ban. And I mean, I'm not even joking. I think. Although, of course, smoking is bad and all that stuff. If you see all the forces that came together in the smoking ban, the idea that you don't have property rights, the idea that you don't know what to do with yourself and your body, and we have others to make it. The smoking ban is the focal point in the decline of the left. This can be a separate episode.
I believe that, although I never liked any place where I was the one who wouldn't go to the place if they smoked. So
that's understandable. That's a different discussion.
Okay, so it's now official. I'm right. Coupling has 4 seasons, 3 seasons with the quirky guy.
Okay.
Only the 4th season is he not there, and it's not as good. But the 3 seasons are fantastic. They're hysterical, and yeah, you guys should definitely check it out. We agree on this too. This is good. All right.
Well, we don't disagree on many things when it comes to popular art and things like that. So
probably not. All right. This is from Incredible Something. I've seen more and more people use the excuse there's no ethical consumption under capitalism for buying things from people or corporations they don't like. Where does this argument come from, and how do we argue against it? There's no ethical consumption under capitalism.
First of all, the mere discussion about ethical consumption is already a defeat for the left, because they moved their activism from the level of changing the production system from the factory. Now it becomes to, oh, my own lifestyle choices. My first book, which I don't recommend because it's an academic one, The Rise of Lifestyle Activism. This is what lifestyle activism means. That now you fight the system by, oh, I bought this matcha coffee, which is from this indigenous tribe with a co-op. No, an actual real leftist. We say this is just you're trying to put a human face to capitalism.
But here he's saying there's no ethical consumption under capitalism, and therefore they buy whatever, because anything they buy under capitalism, which is the belief, which is the current system, is going to be unethical.
Yeah.
So they might as well buy it from anything. That's the next step.
That's the next step. That's the cope.
Yeah.
The not millennials, how they're called, the zillennials, they cannot live without their iPhone. Yeah. So now they say, you know what? Ethical consumption failed. Therefore, I'm gonna buy one iPhone every 3 months. What can I do?
And why is all consumption unethical? Because all consumption is derived from exploitation. So all business exploits. There's just no other way. As soon as you have a salaried employee, that is exploitation. So you theoretically, if you buy from a co-op, but who did the co-op buy its stuff from? Even the co-op bought it probably from people who were paying salaries to other people. So the whole, they've got a kind of a superficial understanding of Marx. And so all they've taken from Marx is the laborer, boss-laborer relationship is unethical. Therefore, all business is unethical. Therefore, all production is unethical. Therefore, all consumption is unethical. I don't think Marx would ever think that way, but that's how the modern left, they're not very sophisticated. That's how they process it. So yes, all consumption under capitalism. Now, how do you argue against it? Well, you have to argue against the very idea that capitalism is exploitative. You have to go to the core. You have to talk about, this is how we organize ourselves under freedom. This is voluntary exchange, the benefit of trade, and labor is just a trade. It's just a form of trade, and therefore ethical. But it's basically condemning all business, and then they buy stuff because what's the option? What choice they have?
It's like altruism. It's impossible to practice it.
Yep. All right, Molten Splendor. If over 50% of the population that live in a mixed economy are not willing to be independent or self-sufficient and want to be taken care of by the government, how is the world ever going to change?
Well, you see this in Europe. It's probably more than 50%. So this is our predicament. Yeah.
I mean, the challenge is to convince people that their lives are worse off because they're accepting handouts, because they're accepting all this stuff. And we cannot do that and will not do that until we have a dominant intellectual presence. And that includes not just intellectual ideas, but also in the arts. So until we can project the idea of a human being with self-esteem, working in the world, creating in the world, and living the best life possible, but do that in every plane with hundreds of intellectuals telling the story and artists writing scripts about it, we can't win. So it's going to require a lot.
Imagine Howard Rourke or what's his name, the guy who Matthew McConaughey plays in Interstellar. Imagine such figures saying, oh, I don't feel like working this month. I'm going to get my check. It's impossible with people who you imagine have people of self-esteem to picture them in a situation where they just wait. So it's first of all demeaning for yourself. It's demeaning. It destroys your soul to become this person.
And if we have intellectuals saying that over and over and over again, we can convince some of them. Some of them will just go with us because they're mindless and they follow the leaders and they follow the latest intellectual trend. We need to become the latest intellectual trend. We need to become the dominant intellectual trend in the culture. Otherwise, nothing will change. And to do that, you need scale. you need scale, which means a lot of intellectuals, and you need art to back it up.
I'm very glad this discussion is opening and it's pressing. It's pressing.
This discussion has been going on forever, but it's always good to continue having the discussion and to energize it. Absolutely. Michael, what would privatizing Central Park look like? Well, as it happens, Central Park is private. So Central Park was built by private individuals who formed a committee and created I think it was a nonprofit, and they bought the land and they created Central Park. And to this day, it's run by a private nonprofit entity that runs everything in the park. So that was easy. And think about that model for the Grand Canyon. Why can't the Grand Canyon be run like that? I mean, why does the state have to own the Grand Canyon? And you could even imagine that on a certain section of the Grand Canyon, they let a few people build, I don't know, a beautiful homes for $100 million each, and with the best view in the world. But they decide where and how and privately. Okay, so Zach just has one word on it that I cannot pronounce: toxoplasmosis. You have no idea what that means? I don't either. Sorry, Zach.
It sounds Greek, but
toxoplasmosis.
I'm Greek and I don't get it. Sorry.
Toxoplasmosis. Yeah. I mean, unless I'm probably mispronouncing it, but right. We need to acknowledge that New York City can be fixed. This is from Chris. Anyone who voted for Mamdani can be educated. New York City can be America's trash dump. I don't know why you think that. I was just in New York. Now, there are a lot of problems in New York, and it's dirty, and there's too much trash piling up, but it's easy to fix. I could fix it in, give me less than a year, and New York could be fixed. I mean, could be fixed tomorrow. It's easy, right? So all you have to do is get rid of rent control and get rid of all the stupid zoning requirements and building requirements, and dramatically wind down the welfare, and initially take all that welfare money and spend it on cleaning up the city, just on hiring private contractors to clean the city, and then finding a way to give incentives to shopkeepers and condo buildings to take care of the pavement in front of their road, maybe a tax break. If in front of your thing it's clean, then you get a tax break. It's so easy. New York is the easiest place in the world to save. Now, I don't have a solution for the people, in a sense that I don't have a solution for how you get the people to vote for that solution. But it's not hard, in terms of policy to fix New York. And New York is still, I was just there, guys. Until you go to New York, you shouldn't talk about New York, is the principle. I mean, with Mamdani and with the fact that some things are falling apart and everything, I didn't go to the subway and I won't go to the subway, but New York's magnificent. It's amazing. It's beautiful. They've got new skyscrapers. There's a whole area in Fifth Avenue that they've just cleared, and they're building a new building on. And we walked a lot along Fifth this time, and you could just see all the pretty skyscrapers, interesting skyscrapers, unusual skyscrapers. Kind of, I like architecture, so the new modern stuff. It's an amazing place. So it's not dead yet. Don't bury it. And I think New York will survive Mamdani. Mamdani is so weak and pathetic. He can't destroy New York.
And you said earlier about Jewish humor that it hits too close at home. I'm a big fan of Woody Allen movies. He's perhaps the director I've seen most films. If you see his 70s, early 80s movies on New York, you get the sense that this is again a New York in crisis. And then again, it went up. Or like The Most Violent Year, the title of the movie, that was literally 1983. So yeah, don't swallow the black pill, people.
New York murder rate is way down. Way down. Other crimes might not be, but murder is way down. It's one of the safest places in America. from in terms of murder, at least. Right. Daniel, do you think the U.S. team can make a run? Oh, in football.
Well,
They just won.
it has a very good coach, it has a good striker, it has a good midfielder, and as it happened in '94, it has captured the imagination of people. By the way, speaking of Team USA, go people and Google United States Football World Cup 1994 second kit and find this gray kit with the stars. My hot take is the president of the United States, when he travels, he should wear a suit. Whenever not wearing a suit, he should have this uniform, right? You see this uniform and you want to start shouting USA. And check it when Alex Lalas is wearing it. Alex Lalas was a Greek American. He's still around, a Greek American, but he had this hair and the mustache. So find US kit, second kit, 94, Alex Lalas, and you'll thank me later.
All right. They won 4-1 against Paraguay. They looked really good. Who knows how far they can go?
Yeah.
Grant, you lived through a few rapid periods of market change, cell phones, internet, e-commerce, 2008, and now AI. AI is my first, and I feel it's changing and updating way too fast to keep up with. How did you keep up and stay calm in rapid times of change? I find change exciting. So I don't want to be calm. I want to be excited. And I don't view it as a threat. I just find it as exciting. Now, AI has the potential to be much bigger than any of those. But, I was there when the first computers came out, and I was excited about that. And, I loved working on them. And, I was skeptical about cell phones, and then got all excited about cell phones. And so I don't know. It's just my orientation has always been, this is amazing. This is cool. I want to embrace it. And I have to tell you, I'm playing around a lot with AI. I think it's super cool. It does amazing things. Now when I'm curious about something, I ask AI. And even today there was some procession outside our condo here with a big Puerto Rican flag and people yelling and music and honking and all this stuff. We're the only route to the State House and the governor's mansion. So anybody who ever wants to marches right by our condo. And I was like, what's going on? So, they say, ChatGPT, what's special about today in Puerto Rico? And it's some Puerto Rican day in New York, and they were sympathizing with it. So it's replaced Google search. It summarizes information amazingly. Once in a while, it gets things wrong, but not often. And it's not, and you can usually catch it. So I'm excited. And now, if you're in the midst of your job career, you have to your attitude has to be, I need to figure this out. And this is true of computers. This is true of the internet. I need to figure this out and make it part of my life so that whatever happens to jobs, I will be ready. And so when the internet came out, playing around the internet, trying to figure out getting the best, in those days, connection was awful, trying to get the best connection, figuring out how it worked, getting a browser, just embracing whatever it is. And then, when YouTube was out, trying to do a show on YouTube or just jump into it. And now soon I'll have some announcements about Yaron AI. So, I'm jumping into the next one. So just take a positive attitude and embrace it, and try to figure out how to impact your life and how to impact your job, and jump into it.
And to our friend, adopt a bit more of an elitist look. So think about it. The masses will use AI for stupid reasons in the same way they use Google and YouTube to watch cat videos. You will use it in a different way, and for you it will become an accelerator or multiplier. So you shouldn't be afraid of it. You should see it. You will have a competitive advantage if you use your mind properly.
Yep, absolutely. Absolutely. And yeah, you've already got a competitive advantage because you're thinking about it. Most people they're not, and they'll use it, to create cat videos, not to watch cat videos. So the fact that you can thinking about it is good. But positive and embrace and take it seriously. It's coming and it's going to change the world. Grant, thank you for the $50. Really, really appreciate it, and good luck
Thank
with whatever happens in your pursuit of AI. All right, selfie subscriber, also $50. In general, do you think politically advocating for individualism can be construed as a liability risk on a government's balance sheet? What? What
again?
U.S. president do you think has been the most anti-individual over our country's history? So I don't know what you mean by can be construed as liability or risk on a government's balance sheet. I don't see how and in what way and in what sense that would be the case. I don't see it as a balance sheet issue, but I don't see the downside of advocating for individualism as a politician. I mean, the downside is you don't get elected, but if you did, what would be the downside of then advocating for it?
And if you do it in the right way, it speaks to people. No one will be hurt if they say, hey, your life matters. You have one life, live it. If you use this language, so I don't think it's a deal breaker or it's a political suicide to talk about these things.
And what US president do you think had the most anti-individual over our country's history? I mean, certainly the early 20th century ones had probably the biggest lasting impact. I don't know, Woodrow Wilson, Teddy Roosevelt, and then FDR reshaped America and reshaped the way we think about America and reshaped it towards a anti-individualistic trend. So, I'd say, those three, are probably the most responsible for the collectivization of America. FDR, Wilson, and Teddy Roosevelt.
The other day, I was having a look at Peter Schwartz's book. I don't remember what I was looking for, but at some point, he has collected some quotes by American politicians against individualism for altruism, and they're unbelievable. So we forget how bad a line of many presidents have been, particularly when they talk about service. It's real.
Oh, yeah.
You can't believe that this comes from an American president.
Yep. Tom, an excellent and necessary topic. Rand saw so much of this coming. Best wishes from London. Thanks, Tom.
Thank you, Tom.
Daniel, thoughts on Yair Lapid? I mean, he's a maybe center-left, hard to tell, kind of centrist Israeli politician, was the leader of the opposition. I don't have strong feelings one way or the other. I mean, he's not awful. He's not terrible. He's not some rabid leftist. But he's a little weak, I think. He's not particularly good on economic issues, but neither is Netanyahu. So, we're talking about what are the options here. He's good looking. I'll give him that. But I think he's just a milquetoast centrist who's articulate, and he's not stupid. He's smart. And look, on foreign policy, basically, if you look at the leaders of the political parties in Israel right now, Netanyahu, Lapid, and Lapid is in the same political party as what's his name, Bennett.
Naftali Bennett,
and Lieberman and Eisenkot. All of those guys basically agree. There's very little difference between them when it comes to Lebanon, Hamas, and Iran. Like, the opposition now is telling Netanyahu, stop being a wimp, bomb Iran, right? So, there's no, when it comes to foreign policy, there's almost no left in Israel. There's a very small left, and the Arab parties who tend to be left on this issue. But there's no left in Israel. So Israel is a center-right country. Everybody's center-right. And then you have the religious parties, which are neither left or right. They're just religious and whatever suits them. And then you have kind of far-right religionist parties. So you have religious nationalist parties. But the bulk, if people got along with Netanyahu, then you could form a government in Israel that basically agreed on almost everything with like 70, mandates out of 120. You would have an overwhelming majority. The problem in Israeli politics is not ideas, it's personalities and the fact that they hate each other.
When are the elections?
October, probably October 20th. October. Jason says the left wants to import Muslims because the left doesn't like straight white Christian men. God. Left thinks they can control Muslims when Muslims are less than 50%.
Let me say one thing here. So I don't believe for a second the idea that the left is aligned with Islam for electoral reasons. First of all, by saying this, you would minimize the importance and the power of ideas. So we spent 1.5 hours trying to explain to you how this alliance was formed and how it is an alliance that has to happen based on what are the intellectual tools that the left has to explain the world. So this almost trivializes this phenomenon, and actually it doesn't even make sense because the people who are imported, they cannot vote, and usually they cannot vote for many years. So saying that this is a plan for the left to win elections, it almost leaves the left off the hook because it doesn't recognize the damage that these ideas that we explained today have done to the way the people view the world, the people who listen to the left view the world. I wish it was that, in a way. I wish it would
just
be
that, yeah.
Just a plan, yes.
And in America, there's just no evidence of this. There's, the big Islamic migrations into America, as big as they have been, have nothing to do with the left. I mean, the Afghans coming to America, these were people who were promised because they helped Americans in Afghanistan and would be killed otherwise. The Somalis wasn't the left. The United States has a crazy, stupid immigration system that doesn't focus on the right things. So, people come into this country for all kinds of bad reasons. That has nothing to do with left or right. Nobody in American politics is serious about fixing the immigration policy, actually putting together a proper immigration policy. And in terms of the illegal immigrants, almost none of them are Muslim. Almost all of them are Latin American and some Chinese. And
so that we don't get misquoted, when we say, I wish it was as simple as that, I mean, it's worse than that. It's not that it's, anyway.
All right, Free Market Capital says, I think Messi is better, but find Ronaldo to have more of an ambitious career. Always taking a new challenge closer to an objectivist ideal.
Come on, guys. You are better than that.
How would you compare their careers?
Come on, guys. Seriously? So here's what happened. First of all, Messi is, to put it very simply, as good in scoring as Ronaldo, and at the same time, better at dribbling, not better than Ronaldo, better than anyone who's ever came. Better at being a creator, and better at being a number 10. So there's no comparison. The one person who started this discussion was Ronaldo himself. This will be the equivalent, guys, imagine, and again, I like Ronaldo, but imagine if tomorrow I start the discussion, I'm the best objectivist ever. And then it's like, oh, there's a discussion now. Who is the best objectivist? No, there's no discussion. I started it. So yes, there are some people like our friend who are mistaken on this, but there is no serious. There might be a discussion on, let's say, Messi versus Pelé, because different eras, but Messi versus Ronaldo, come on. Which are the areas that...
What about this question? I don't know their careers, but what about this question about ambition during their careers?
Yes. So what actually happened is Ronaldo was, at some point, he changed many teams. And he said, oh, Messi has it the easy way because he stayed in the same team. How is staying in the same team easier than going to super teams? He left Manchester United and he went to Real Madrid. How is this? Okay, it is ambitious, but it makes your life easier. Whereas Messi stayed there, he saw Pep Guardiola, the best manager, leave. He saw the best players leave. And at some point, he was carrying by himself Barcelona. How is this the easy way? And what Ronaldo did was the difficult way. This was a narrative that Ronaldo created. And again, respect to Ronaldo, he's not in the same discussion with Messi. This is a hill I'm gonna die, and this is not a football question. This is an epistemological question. I think people who say Ronaldo and Messi are in the same discussion, look at reality, look at the evidence.
All right, free market, same person. Nikos, if you were NBA commissioner, what would you do to make the league better? How would you fix tanking, for example?
Yeah, so this. It's interesting. The salary cap, some people will say, is a socialist measure, but when it's voluntarily agreed, I understand that. So think, for example, in this decade, we've had since 2019 different teams win the title. So NBA doesn't need fixing when it comes to the competition. The one thing that does need fixing is, first of all, there are too many games in the regular season, guys. 82 games. No one cares about the regular season. And also, the games are way too long, way too long. A game cannot last 2.5 hours. So why is a timeout 3 minutes? And particularly with the low attention span of Gen Zs, I'm worried that this is a generation that does not watch games. It watches highlights. It wakes up, it sees the highlights in the mobile phone. This is how they consume basketball. And you cannot understand basketball based on. So today, more people care about the content rather than the game itself. So this is the area I would choose. Fewer games. And when it comes to the tanking, the rules of drafting new players is so complicated that I don't even know where to start. It's
drafting
difficult
and the trading. I mean, the rules for trading are so complicated. It's just, I have no idea what they're doing.
Yeah. But
Right.
I always want to thank a bit extra the people who ask the sports question, because I always feel alone in the objectivist movement. No one follows sports. It's a lonely business.
Not completely true. All right. But yes, relatively lonely. Christos, is there any sense or context in which being nationalistic and proud of your country is appropriate?
Proud of your country? Yes, if there are reasons to be proud of your country. Nationalistic in terms of, in a tribal way, my country, no questions asked. No, it's never good. So usually people who tell me this, I say, look, let's say this is what I tell to my Greek friends. If you were born in Turkey, would you be a Turkish nationalist? And if their answer is yes, then I say, okay, then what's your beef with Turkish nationalists? They have as an equal right as you have. So I never understood this point. You should be proud of your country if your country gives you any reason to be proud. Sometimes the most patriotic decision might be to turn against the quote nationalist case for your country. So the patriotic person in Iran should want Iran to lose the war against Israel, for example.
Yep.
To give you an example. That's the patriotic stance.
So I agree. Nationalistic, never. Patriotic, yeah, if the country deserves it. You don't, even if you live in Iran, you don't have to be patriotic. You don't have to be patriotic for any particular place. They have to deserve it. That is, your loyalty has to be earned. All right, last question from Daniel. Has Nikos been converted to the National Hockey League yet?
No, I've never watched hockey. So here's my belief is you should only follow sports that you understand well. This is why at some point I stopped following UFC. If I can't follow something and understand it well, I don't want to follow it at all. Because then you end up with with a superficial, which I don't like. I follow only football and basketball because I understand them well. So no idea about hockey. Also, I found stupid this thing where if two players decide to beat it out with each other, they're allowed to do it. I never understood this rule.
Supposedly, if you go to an actual hockey game live and you see the speed and the force in which they're playing, it captures you, right? You can't appreciate it on television, is the story I hear.
Maybe if we were in the Cold War and there were all these stakes against the Soviet Union, that there would be an interesting story there. But I'm afraid no, I've never watched hockey. I've never skated on ice, actually.
So free market capital is coming back at you with, what do you make of the claim that Messi is more talented, but Ronaldo is more hardworking achievement.
Again, that's the only reason people believe this is because Ronaldo every day posts 5 stories with him working out. So you think that Messi has been at this top level from 2000, let's say 6 till 2026 without working hard?
Yeah.
You think Messi is the best in free kicks. He's the best in all these things. It doesn't come from hard work. Of course, he works equally hard. It's just it hasn't created this myth because Messi is a first-hander. Yes, he doesn't care what stories they say about him. There's a very nice video where someone tells him something like, hey, you know what? This was your 50th hat trick of your career. And Messi was, oh, I didn't know that. Whereas Ronaldo, whenever he leaves from a team to get to a bigger challenge, as he says, he posts on Instagram his analytics, his statistics. Oh, I scored X. Dude, we know. We can find it in Wikipedia. I'll finish with this. Leadership does not mean being the most loud person. My partner is a coach, and we were watching this video how the Argentinian team respects Messi and how they wait for him. There's a video, if you put Messi leadership Argentina, it's in a very organic way. They just literally look up at him and they know that when he's there, they feel better. Messi is an introvert. He's not like, oh, let's go. It doesn't mean that the loudest person is the better leader or the guy who is hustling. So there are different styles of leadership, different styles of greatness. They're both great. We're very lucky that we've seen them, we've experienced them, not in the same category.
I don't know. I haven't followed football, so I don't know the details. But I've seen interviews of Messi and I've seen interviews of Ronaldo. And Messi's smart. Ronaldo isn't. And he's not articulate. He's not Messi's thoughtful. He's smart. He's engaged. He's got a genuine personality where Ronaldo is the good-looking one. I mean, Messi's short. He's not particularly good-looking. He's not particularly athletic. Think about that too. I mean, Messi is short for a football player, for any athlete. He's short. I mean, this was the big thing when he was a kid, and why it was. A lot of people didn't expect much of him. There's no way Messi reached the level that he does. I saw a documentary about him. I mean, when he went to Barcelona as a kid, I mean, the amount of work that he had to do to live up to their expectations and to make the adult team and to stay at that level, it's just unbelievable. And again, I agree with you, he has this quiet leadership quality that it's pretty amazing. All right. Cool. Thanks, everybody. Thanks to all the super chatters. Thanks to all the stickers. Thank you, Nikos. Not sure what we're talking about next week, but there will be a show Sunday next week.
2 things. First, let's decide it quickly because I want to start preparing, and send me the collaboration link already so more people watch it. This was a very important episode.
Yep. All right. Thank you, guys. See you guys next week. Bye, everybody.